Hello and welcome back to Project 380. The green Mark 1 has just arrived at my garage and it's definitely broken. So you may remember this green Mark 1 from a while ago with a broken timing belt. Well, now it's back again and really broken. So the customer states there was fire coming from the engine bay, everything died. I was on holiday at the time, so he had it shipped to a local garage. The garage done absolutely nothing. And then while I was at the garage, they stole the cat. So I've got a bit of work ahead, but let's pop that bonnet open and see what's gone on. So someone told me there was an electrical fire, and by the looks of it, someone's already been playing with a fuse box and started stripping some wires back. I can't see any evidence of burning. Oh, wait. Yep, definitely melted. Doesn't look too bad. A few wires are melted together down there, and well, this is just a mess. Definitely done a good bit of singeing there. Doesn't look like it's got any further down towards the bulkhead, so I don't think that's too bad. I don't think it reached any further towards the front of the car by the looks of it. None of this part is singed or burnt or melted together. Everything over this side seems to be alright. I think we've just got a bit of repair to do here. Yep, that cat's definitely gone. I have just noticed a little bit more down here, so I think I'm going to have to strip that sheathing back and have a good look underneath here. Well, that's not ideal. You guys know how much I love wiring. First off, before I touch any of the wiring, I think it's probably a good idea to disconnect the battery. Oh, it's already disconnected. Well, it is pretty bad, but not as bad as I first thought. The loom from here forward is completely untouched. The main power wires into the dash, which the insulation was burnt on, is a little bit singed, but completely usable. The plug to the purge solenoid, that's completely fine. Just the insulation a little bit singed. The main loom that comes from the back of the car that goes underneath, well, that's pretty ruined. Only to about here though. And this bunch of wires here, that's melted and completely unusable. All the way to about here somewhere. Other than that, the rest is fine. This plug is pretty melted in. So now let's take this fuse box apart and see what's going on inside. Well, not a single one of the fuses have blown, which is quite concerning. Let's take this apart and see what's going on. Well, by the looks of things, it's all caused by this wire here, as that seems to be melted pretty bad, and I think it's all caused by this. But by the looks of it, we're going to have to replace the whole fuse box as well. It started melting up the top there, and obviously it's all connected to the main harness that goes to the back. Very strange that none of the fuse is blown. So, I'm off to go get some parts. So, it's been a few days, and this absolute box of nightmare has turned up. I managed to get a complete wiring loom. Every wire in the whole car. I managed to get this shipped from Suffolk Mazda. They're an MX5 breakers down in Suffolk. I'll leave their link down below. So because I've got a whole wiring loom, I think I'm going to change the parts I need rather than cutting and splicing it. But because I've got the whole harness, this is going to be really handy as we can see where everything plugs in and where everything attaches, and hopefully make this easier to remove from the car. So I'm going to start off with the main harness with the fuse box, This goes from the bonnet, underneath, along the PPF, and to the battery. So we can see here we've got the starter motor wires, and the alternator wires, and then all the clips that attach to the PPF, and then the battery terminals. I think the only thing I'm going to have to do is replace this eye that goes on the back of the PPF right near the diff here. As a very common issue, these do like to break. So let's start off in the boot. Battery's already disconnected. We've just got to undo this earth here with a 10mm bolt and then undo it all the way up to here. So that's all disconnected. There is one little plug down there with some red wires on it. I've disconnected that, and now it goes through the chassis. I have taken the spare wheel out to make this bit a little bit easier, but we know this section of the wiring harness goes through the chassis that way. As if we look at the new one, it's got this little grommet here, and just by looking at it, we can tell it goes through the chassis that way. So we've just got to pinch this together with a pair of pliers and push it through. Then after this grommet, there is this little metal bracket here, which is in the wheel arch back there behind a bit of plastic, and then the rest is attached to the PPF. So it's about time we got this car jacked up and this wheel off. It's safely up on some axle stands now, and the wheel is off. And in the driver's wheel arch is this bit of plastic here, held on with a few bolts, which is probably underneath the dirt here, which we need to remove to get access to the wire here. But when I took this wheel off, I've discovered two more problems. This shock is definitely leaking. It's pretty wet, and that is some nasty rust. So let's get this plastic off. One bolt here, 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 and here. I was fighting with those bolts so long, it's now dark. But they're finally loose, and this cover can come off, revealing that grommet we pushed through the boot, and a brake pipe that needs replacing. But this wiring harness is held in here with this plastic bracket, which is one rusty bolt here and one plastic pinch clip there. Well, I was very surprised, but that bolt came out nicely. Now I'm going to put the other bolts back in where they came from so I don't lose them, and then pull this wiring through from the boot. So this is going to be a little bit hard to see. Up here we've got a bracket that holds it to the subframe, and then right there is that eye that's broken on the new harness that is bolted straight to the PPF, and then a plastic clip there which you pinch from the other side of the PPF and pull through this way. Now this earthen eye and this bracket here on the subframe, both them bolts are probably going to snap. So yep, they both snapped, but now it's onto these white clips that are held into the PPF. All you got to do is squeeze these together and pull them away from the PPF, and it's just those all the way along until you get to the gearbox, which has got 4 plugs. It's slightly different on the Mark II and the 2.5, but these are for the neutral switch and the reverse switch. Just take note of where they came from. These are a bit awkward to get to as they're on top of the gearbox, so I'm going to take this all out off of camera as you're not going to be able to see anything. All off of the PPF now, and I've taken off the gearbox cover so I can gain access to the gearbox plugs. And now right up there we've got a bracket held on with a 10mm bolt to the side of the gearbox. That needs to come off. Hopefully that doesn't snap. And then there's another one right above it. I'm not sure whether you can see it, but right next to the clutch line, which is right there, which is going to be a nightmare to get to. And there is a plastic clip just behind it which I can't get in focus, but that bolt's a 10mm and it's a real struggle to get out. Not that you can see, but those two clips are disconnected now. And if we head on to the new harness, it was this clip here that was held on, and now we can see we go straight to the starter motor with the main power wire for the starter motor and the signal wire, and 3 near the alternator. And the best way to remove that is to get this wheel off. But it's really dark, so that's a job for tomorrow. A new day and the wheel is off, which means we can get access up in here for the starter motor, and then I think the oil pressure sensor, and at the front the alternator. I'm going to do this all off of camera as all you're going to see is my arm in the way. That's all disconnected. That was an absolute nightmare. Now watch out, everything is a bit sharp down there, and you will slice up your arms a little bit. But now, because someone's already started to remove the fuse box, which is just held on with this little bracket, that means the last bracket we've got is down here, holding this wiring harness to the chassis, and that's just a 10mm bolt. And with that disconnected, that means we can start pulling this wiring harness through. Well, wearing gloves was pointless. Every single clip, grommet and plug was getting stuck. Right here on the back of the intake manifold, there's a really rough bit of casting. A bracket here on the back of the EGR that holds a load of wiring on. I was getting caught on that. And the worst part was the clutch pipe down there. Because there's the standard clutch pipe, there's a bracket down there, a flexi pipe and loads of hard pipe. And it was getting stuck on that all the way. So that clutch pipe has taken quite a battering. But at least that harness is out. Now the new fuse box and wiring harness is almost ready to go in, but it's probably a good idea we put a new eye on this earth terminal first and find a new hole on the PPF for this to go. That's better. I'll find a new home once all this is underneath the car, but this could go back in exactly how it came out. It'd be much easier if there was no EGR and we had a nice braided clutch line. We'd have a much smoother shot through into the transmission tunnel, but it's got to go in. Well, that was significantly easier to get in. Not sure why it was easier to get in than it was to get out, but the new fuse box is in the engine bay and all the wire is fed down to the transmission tunnel. The starter motor wire and the alternator wires are all fed. I'm not going to bolt this in just yet as we've still got this monstrosity to deal with. But it's now dark, I've lost all light and there's a car alarm going off in the background. So I'll see you in the morning. It's another day and I've got a bit of sunlight. So, all the fuse box is sort of in the engine bay, starter motor and alternator is all connected, and the wire is ran all the way down the PPF. I did have to tie wrap the loom onto the PPF, as the clips weren't sticking in great. Now the earthen wire on the PPF, it used to go there but the bolt has snapped, but I've put a new earthen eye on it. But right on the back of the diff, right there, is a nice threaded hole, and there's plenty of length on the earth wire to go there. I just need to clean that thread up and find a bolt that goes in it and put the earthen eye there, like that. So now I can take the last bit of the harness, route it up behind this rusty brake pipe and through the hole in the chassis and into the boot, and reattach this plastic bracket here and put the wheel arch liner back in. All in the boot now, clipped up where it should be. That plug right back there is plugged in, but I haven't connected it up to the battery just yet, as we've still got all the other wiring to do. And I'm pretty sure this battery's going to need charging, as this car's been off the road for months. But if you are going to put an 063 battery in your MX5, don't do a makeshift battery tray and hold it with a bungee cord. Just buy the G19 battery tie down for the 063 battery, as it's going to be a lot safer than this. Yep, that battery was definitely dead. So we'll leave that on charge and start sorting out the rest of this melted spaghetti. Now I'm confident that the loom that goes to the front of the car is completely fine and untouched. Even right down here towards the bulkhead, it seems to be fine. The wires that lead all to the engine behind the brake booster, that all seems to be fine. It is just all these wires that lead to the fuse box. So I'm in two minds what to do. I have obviously got a whole new wiring loom, but to change that front bumper's got to come off, and we're going to have to do a lot of work in here, which really and truthfully would be easier if the whole dashboard was out. Now I'm fine with taking the dashboard out, it is a lot of work, but I know for a fact that pretty much all the bolts on this front bumper are going to snap, as I have tried to take it off before. So I'm debating whether to change the whole wiring harness or just patch these leads into the existing harness, which is still a lot of work, but not as much work as taking off the bumper and the dash and replacing the whole wiring loom. Nope, absolutely not. That is getting spliced in. So I think I'm going to peel back all this sheathing and find out which plugs I need and work at this one plug at a time. All the wires are different colours, so I shouldn't have an issue. But just on a side note, if you are buying a new harness for your MX5, you want the same year and make sure you've got the right one, because import and English are different and 1.8 and 1.6 are different. I know this wiring harness is right for this car and all the plugs are right, but I guess the rest is good for spares. Okay, I've been looking over this for ages now, and I think there's a slight change of plans. The main culprit of this fire is this plug here, and as we can see, one wire is worse than the rest, which is that top one in the middle there, which is melted all the way and even into the bulkhead grommet. Not that you can see. On the new harness, it's this plug, goes through the bulkhead and all into this massive wire. Now, I don't know how far down this is melted, and I'm not sure what condition the wires are in this bulkhead grommet, but I think we're going to have to change the main harness. So that does mean unplugging everything. I think we can simplify this quite a lot. As you can see, I've already started to, and I think we could do just the main part underneath the dash, which is one bulkhead grommet there going to the driver's side, and one bulkhead here going to the passenger side. You can see they are the three main plugs for the ECU, the fuse box in the footwell, and the dash wires. So I'm thinking if I can unplug all this side and all that side, pull them both through into the dash, and then we've just got to fight with all the wires behind the dash. I'm sort of hoping I could do this without taking the dash out, but I'm not feeling confident. So let's start unplugging everything. So that is all the passenger side unplugged now, and I completely forgot, on a Mark 1 you could take off this coolant panel rather than taking the bumper off to disconnect the bonnet release and the horns. So I've pulled all that through now, and a quick tip, the wiring loom that goes underneath the brake booster over here, if you unplug everything and pull it slightly back towards the engine, then you can get it all underneath the brake booster this way, as all them plugs don't fit behind it. But that's all done on the passenger side of the engine bay now. Now I'm working inside the dash. So I've taken off the steering cowl and the dash cluster and this little plate here. And you can see a load of wires underneath the steering column. Let me get a torch. And all the wiring up there. I'm going to have to unbolt that all off of camera, as I'm not going to get both my arms and a camera up there. But you'll need to detach the bonnet release as well, as that goes through the same grommet through the bulkhead as all the wiring harness does. And I'm going to have to take off this panel as well, as there's a plug right here somewhere for the door, and a plug that leads to the wiring loom that goes down here, which I'm not taking out. So because I'm going to try taking this out without removing the dashboard, I'm going to get myself in all sorts of awkward positions to try and disconnect all these wires. Hopefully that goes well, and then we can move on to the passenger side. Well, 2 hours later, and the dash is out. I just could not get to these bits up here whatsoever, and I couldn't really see what was going on down here. Should I have taken the steering wheel off? Yes. Should I have taken the gear stick off? Definitely. And did I hurt myself? Yes. Dashboards are incredibly sharp for some reason, so just be careful when you're doing this. But it's fairly simple. 2 bolts here either side. 2 bolts here either side, 2 bolts on the steering column, take off the centre armrest, take out the centre console, take out the heating control, unplug what you can, and the last hidden bolt right up here, and then carefully wiggle it out. But now with the dashboard out of the way, I can start removing the wiring. It's pointless wearing gloves, but I've already unplugged the steering column, unplugged the cluster, unplugged the relays down here. We now need to disconnect the clutch switch, undo that earth block there, undo the footwell fuse box, just one bolt right up there. With the fuse box out of the way, you can then pull all these plugs out of the side of the chassis here. There's one last one which is a little bit difficult to get to. That is for the door, but they can all be unplugged. Then I can start detaching these wires from the dash, and that's pretty much the driver's side done. Yep, I was definitely right to change it. So here is the bulkhead grommet, and look, that wire is burnt all the way up to this junction, and this junction here has actually started melting. I'm not quite sure how far back the damage goes, but I'm glad I made the right choice and decided to change the whole harness rather than patching it in here. So now, just the passenger side to go. So I'm unplugging the passenger side, and I come to the relay box down here and realise that this relay has completely melted. It's a really good job we're changing this wiring harness. I am quite surprised the whole car hasn't gone up in flames. So that's all disconnected from in the engine bay now. Now I need to pull it through into the dash. To make that easier, I'm going to take out the blower, the pipe that links the blower to the centre, and we'll see whether we have to remove this unit. Whatever happened to this car was pretty serious, because that is all melted too, right up behind this centre, completely melted. So next up, getting the floor carpet out of the way, disconnecting the ECU down here, disconnecting the door here, and pulling it away from the bulkhead. If you've never had your ECU out before, I've got some bad news for you. Not only is there a nut here, a nut there, and a bolt there, but there's two security screws there, and they both need either grinding off or drilling out. Once they're out the way, the ECU footplate can be moved, and then we can see the ECU. Many drill bits later, and they're all drilled out, and that can come off. And underneath, our ECU. And then we've just got 3 plugs to unplug. All unclipped from the bulkhead now, and I've pulled back that firewall a little bit. So now we can start pulling the passenger side loom through the bulkhead, which is going to be easier with 2 people. Can you hold the camera still, please? So that's all pulled through into the footwell now, and I don't think there is any hope of getting this behind the heater. So I may be being a little bit hopeful, but hopefully just with that nut, and that nut, and sliding the core out of the heater, hopefully I could just pull the mass of the heater forward, leaving the heater core where it is, and be able to get these wires out. Well, I've managed to swing that just far enough away for a little bit of wiggle room to get that behind there. If you are going to do this, just be careful. These 2 pipes are pretty fragile. To be honest, I just didn't want to disconnect them, as that meant I'd have to bleed the cooling system again. And I've already got enough work. But now that's out of the way, the wiring harness could be pulled out the car. Old harness, new harness, back in the car. Let me fold this out of the way a little bit. see this one with the fluff on it?
Yeah.
Just pull that through, mate. There you go. Right, give the whole thing a little bit of a pull, mate. Yep, right, stop.
That's a lot of blood.
Yep. Right. Now the grommet. That's in. That's one side. Let's do the other. Oh, there's a spider in my ear. Big plug. Right. Let me just work out what's got to go through next. Right. Indicator wire. Grab that little one, yep. Because it's got a bit on there. Right, this bit's gonna suck a little bit.
Give it a tap now.
Yeah.
You go?
Yep, pull it. Okay, one last plug. Yep.
Yeah, got it.
Cool, right. Now the whole lot. Yeah. In. Thanks, Charlie.
Anytime. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is. So it's a new day, and that was Charlie you just saw there. So Charlie was giving me a hand. I was putting the plugs and the wires up through the bulkhead while he was pulling them through into the engine bay. I definitely would have struggled doing this by myself, and then he helped me put all the interior back together. So a massive thanks to Charlie. So to say thanks to Charlie, go and check out his YouTube channel, which is linked right here, where he's building an RX-7, and I think you should head to his channel and tell him to put a rotary in it. So anyway, the interior is all back together now. Everything's plugged in and where it should be. Now all I've got to do is plug everything in the engine bay. All plugged in and back on the ground now, and there's a couple of things I haven't plugged in. The battery's still disconnected, the headlights aren't in, and the relay that goes in this plug here, the N300 relay, I haven't plugged in either, as I believe this is where the fire started, or the electrical problem. But if I'm right in saying that relay does the headlight and the headlight motors, so I'm hoping the car will start and run without this relay in. If I am wrong in saying that relay's for the headlight motors, please correct me in the comments. So let's grab the keys and see whether it all works. Oh yeah, the battery. Well, I'm a little bit concerned. When I attached the battery, the headlights went down, but if I turn the headlights on, the headlights don't come up. But if I press the pop-up button, they do. So anyway, let's see whether the car works without that relay in. Well, we've definitely got electrics. Well, definitely got a misfire as well. It's slowly sorting itself out. Well, that didn't sound good. Well, it's running a little bit better now. Having no exhaust definitely doesn't help, and the fact that this hasn't been run for months probably just needs a good run. But I'll turn that off now before I upset all my neighbours, and check in the engine bay, make sure everything's alright. So that's all back together and working. I'll contact the owner and see what he wants to do about the rest. All I've got to do is find a replacement H300 relay. I don't want to see any more wiring for a very long time. Ah, damn it. So it's been a few days and the owner has gone ahead with a few of the repairs. So after inspecting the front suspension, he really needs new shocks and coils all the way round. So I found him a second-hand set of coilovers, and I've ordered him a new cat and downpipe. So while we're waiting for the cat and downpipe to turn up, I'm going to get the coilovers fitted. I'm going to breeze over this really quickly as I've already covered this before, but I'm going to start at the back. I'm going to do one axle at a time, so I'm going to do both the back suspension all in one go. The spare wheel's out, so we've already got access to this top mount, but this side I've got a few things in front of it. So let's get it jacked up and the wheels off and start stripping this apart. Both the wheels off now, and it's quite surprising. These are tines, and even this one's blown out, and they're really not in the best condition anymore. But time to remove them. Now, definitely going to be easier to take the drop link out, both sides, as then you're not fighting with the rest of the suspension. So it's yet another day working on this car. The coilovers are all on and maybe sitting a little bit high, but I'll change the ride height once all the work is done. As right now, this wheel needs to come off and the whole side of the car jacked up, as we got the exhaust fixed. So I've got a new downpipe and a new cat. When you are replacing your cat on a Mark 1, just be aware there are 3 different lengths, and that all depends on the model and the year, so make sure you're ordering the right one. And the same with a decat pipe. But after a bit of VIN number searching, I think I've got the right one. But there's one thing I'm concerned about, and that's the O2 sensor that goes in the downpipe here. If you can see it down there, that looks a little bit crusty. So the manifold separates from the downpipe just there, and as you can see, it's a bit tricky to get to from the engine bay, but it's a lot easier if you take that wheel off. The car up in the air now, and the wheel off. And we can see in this wheel arch the flange between the manifold and the downpipe with the O2 sensor there. And there is one more bracket right there holding the downpipe onto the gearbox. So I'm not going to fight with the O2 sensor while it's in the car. I'm going to unplug it, take the downpipe off, and then fight with it. On the later Mark 1 1.8s, the O2 plug is right here. Unplug that and untangle the wire from the engine. That's unplugged and untangled now, so we could just dangle that down there for now. I would say I would have started working on the bracket that connects the downpipe to the gearbox, but there's no bolt in there and it looks like it's rusted away, so I don't think we have to worry about that. Just 3 exhaust nuts holding the flange onto the manifold, and they're going to be a nightmare to undo. So, downpipe off the car now. There's the O2 sensor. The chances of this coming out the downpipe are pretty slim, but I'm going to fight with this off a camera. I'll either see you in a minute with the old O2 sensor out, or with a new O2 sensor. Well, I didn't expect that. That O2 sensor looked really bad, but it managed to come out. It did take me about half an hour though. So, new downpipe, ready to go in the car. Both flanges are nice and clean now. So let's get this in the car before it rains. Downpipe is on and secure, minus the bracket holding it to the gearbox. I'll have to order a new one of them. Just got to plug the O2 sensor in now and install the new cat. Well, it's actually been about 5 days. That cat I put on was manufactured wrong and I had to get a new one. But in the meantime, I have lowered the car to a better height. So let's start her up, see whether she sounds better and whether it runs right. Oh, the battery. Well, definitely not quite right. Definitely sounds a lot quieter, but definitely got a misfire. So, the first coil pack, as this is 2 separate coil packs, is doing absolutely nothing. So, I've been doing a little bit of digging, and something strange is definitely happening. So the brown wire in this plug here does the coil pack for 2 and 3. The brown and the yellow wire does the power for coil 4 and 1. There's power in the brown and yellow one, but not in the brown, which is strange because 4 and 1 aren't working, but 2 and 3 are. So I tested it at the ECU. The brown wire is only getting 0.3 volt, and the brown and yellow is getting 14 volt. So I don't think it's a wiring issue, but I'm really hoping this ECU hasn't taken damage. So I'm really not sure what to do now with this. I'm still waiting on that H300 relay to turn up, and now it's developed another issue, which I'm not sure whether it was there before. So I think that's all for this video. Hopefully I'll do a follow-up video on this in the future, but as per usual, like, comment, share and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.